you just don't like women. Welcome to the Weekly Fix podcast, where we're just two friends talking about our passions within movies, TV shows, gaming, and comics. Thanks for checking out the podcast. We hope you like it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Weekly Fix. My name is Jacob. Joining me, as always, is Zane, and this is our Fantastic Four review episode. We were both able to make it out to the theater. We finally got to go to the movies together again, which was a lot of fun to be able to discuss it right after it was over. So we're going to have lots of things to talk about. We're going to be talking about how this movie's been received. We're going to be giving our spoiler review and obviously our non-spoiler review as well. But before we get into any of that, Zane, how are you doing?
Man, I'm doing great. It's been a busy week, but we had a great weekend. We had just kind of a good thing that my grandma is doing better. I know we talked about her breaking her leg, but she's actually going to get to go home tomorrow. So that is nice, that she is healing well. God's really been able to kind of provide a lot of good things for her throughout this. And so it's nice that she's going to be able to travel back home. I actually just got back from going down to see her tonight. So it's nice. It's actually kind of sad that I'm not going to be able to drive and see her like I have been in this past week, but so thankful that she's going to get to go home where she's comfortable and finish up her healing there. What about you?
Yeah, more of the same, been busy like you said, but it's been a fun week because like we just talked about, we did get to go see Fantastic Four. It was a fun weekend. I got to head up to Savannah, Georgia this weekend. I got to spend some time with some of Danielle's family members that were in the area. So that was always fun getting to hang out with them. We got some good food and I got to do a little bit of comic book shopping, which was fun. While we were walking the streets, I came across a couple of comic shops that had some pretty good stuff in them. So it's always fun when you kind of come across those like random shops that you weren't expecting to hit and then they actually have some good stuff in them. And then you put them on your radar for the rest of your life when you're in that area. So always fun to kind of be able to do those things and hunt for some stuff that's fun. But overall, it's just been a pretty good week and I'm excited to talk about this Fantastic Four movie.
And you got a really sick Invincible comic, didn't you? A rare one?
Yeah, so a lot of people maybe don't know. I don't know if we talked about it some, but I'm actually on the quest to collect every single issue of Invincible that's ever been made. And I came across an issue 120, which if you guys know the significance of that book, you know. I don't want to say what the significance of it is, because if you don't, it's a big spoiler. But I came across it for a really good deal. It's like a $250 to $300 book, and I got it for $100. So that was super cool. Always fun to like hunt those deals around. There's like the deals you don't ever hear about, or you don't ever feel like you ever find, and you always hear about other people finding these good deals. So whenever you come across a good one, you're like, oh, it's so exhilarating and it's so fun. So that was definitely a big one to cross off of my list of Invincible comics that it feels like I've come a long way, but then I look at the list and I'm like, oh my gosh, I still got like over 100 issues to go. But it's part of the journey, you know. I'm not going to get too slummed down over the fact that I got a lot to go. I'm just excited about the ones I've been able to find so far.
Well, and you really have a lot of luck above 100 right now. That's really where most of your collection lies. You still have a lot before 100, right? Issue 100.
Yeah, and that's a little bit by design. I still need to get a lot of like the 70 through like 90 issues because that hasn't happened in the show yet, those issues. I'm really am kind of focusing on the issues that haven't happened in the show yet because I want to knock those off my list before they get to the show and then inevitably get more expensive because we've seen that a lot with a lot of books. I know, for instance, like the first appearance of Conquest, that used to still be an expensive book because it's a first appearance, it's a big character, but you used to be able to find that one for like $40-$50. Now it's like a $200 book because of the show. So really trying to work and knock off a lot of the things that haven't happened yet just to avoid that price hike whenever we do get there.
Yeah, because that's frustrating when you've seen something be like reasonably priced or maybe even what you think is a little low or a little high to be paying for it, and then 2 months later it's double what it was.
Yeah,
you'd want to grab those before that happens.
Yeah, so that's kind of been my focus so far with Invincible, and hopefully that should be something realistically we should be maybe getting a trailer for soon because I know they said they wanted to do a new season every year, and usually they drop those earlier on in the year, so I'm expecting maybe a trailer here in the next couple months might be kind of cool, or at least a teaser or something. What do you think about that?
Well, I could see it. We just got the little tease that season 5 voice acting was starting on Invincible, so that in and of itself shows us that they have to be close to season 4 if they're already focusing on voice casting, which means they've done the script, they've done, or not casting, I guess that recording. So they've already done the script, they already know what's going on. So they do the voice first and then they animate to fit the voices. So that shows that they make quite a bit of progress in that realm. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we see one pretty soon.
Well, one thing that we do have coming pretty soon, which it is now public to the world, but we did get a little bit of an early sneak peek at it when we went to watch the Fantastic Four. And guys, we will get into the Fantastic Four review here shortly, but we did want to touch on the new Avatar movie coming out here soon. Like I said, we got a little sneak peek. If you went to Fantastic Four on like the first couple of nights, they did show it literally right before the movie started, which I thought was a cool little nod, especially with these summer blockbuster movies, always getting the opportunity to see some sneak peeks at stuff coming out in the future. Zane, what did you think about the new Avatar trailer?
I really enjoyed it. It didn't really give much away at all in terms of like thought, but it did give a hint of what our characters are going to go through. We didn't get to see, the entire plot of the movie, which I really like. I don't want my trailers to spoil what's going to happen in the movie, but just hint at it. That's nice. Absolutely gorgeous. I love seeing it on the big screen. Pandora is always such a nice, visually pleasing, uh, just setting. James Cameron does an amazing job with these characters, with this world. He pours so much intentionality and like just dedication into making sure that these films are exactly what he wants and display exactly the vision that he has in his head. And just seeing the new dynamics that are going to be with not all of the Nari being good, that's going to be really cool to kind of see what some of these evil ones are like. And so I don't know, it got me excited. I definitely think after seeing this trailer and with how everything else is performing worldwide, that this one will be 100% the box office king of 2025.
Yeah, I think that was kind of a given with what we've seen in the past from these movies. I think all the things you touched on were great. I think this feels like a really natural progression for the story. And I also think, like you said, they really didn't tell us much about the plot or anything like that. It really just felt like they were putting their visual prowess on display, which they definitely did. Everything looked fantastic, which we know these movies always do. And I feel like that's almost half of the reason why you go to these movies is because you kind of just want to be visually stunned. So I thought it looked really good. My wife hasn't seen the last one that came out, so we're gonna have to watch that one before this one. And I know she's not the biggest fan of it, but I think she'll be a little more interested in it now that there's one literally coming out this year. Kind of more excited to be able to get prepared for something coming out in the future.
Yeah. Well, and I understand not being a super big fan of the first one. Visually, it's incredibly unique and, worlds ahead of its time and what everything that was going on. But I mean, story-wise, it's pretty basic.
Hmm.
It's a story that's been told before. It seems like, almost every Native American movie that's been, done in the past where cowboy loses his home, finds his tribe and understands that like they're not savages. It's a story told time and time again. But the second one, I think, just really expounds upon the storytelling in the Avatar world. And so, if you watch the first one and didn't like it, I definitely would say give the second one a try. It's more beautiful than the first one. The technology just got better. It's
Hmm.
also got a cooler dynamic with the water. And then, I think the story is significantly better, more focused on family, less focused on self. And I just really love the second Avatar movie.
Yeah, I'm excited for her to watch it. I think it will get her a little bit more into it because I was kind of the same way. Like you said, it is a pretty basic first story, but it feels like that was really just like even though it took years to get the second one, it really did feel like that was just kind of easing us into the world. And then the second one came out and it was just like, boom, here's all this stuff and how intricate and, dynamic this world can really be. So I thought that was a lot of fun. But let's get into our Fantastic Four review here. And obviously, we'll start off with the non spoiler aspect of it. We like to talk about the acting, the action, the visual effects of it all. But first off, I do want to talk about the acting in our non spoiler free part because I feel like there has been a little bit of controversy throughout this whole Fantastic Four casting experience. Until we got up to the movie, there were people that weren't super happy about Pedro Pascal. I know a lot of people weren't happy about the Joseph Quinn casting as Human Torch. Zane, how did you feel about the acting of this movie? Did you feel like these actors, who are all big name actors, do you feel like they lived up to the moment of being in their first Marvel movie, or do you still feel like they were kind of miscasted here?
So this is probably going to be my biggest hot take of the entire thing, and I know you're going to disagree with me, but I still kind of hold true to my Pedro Pascal criticisms. I think he did a very, very good job, but this is not the best we've seen Pedro. So I think he did very good, but I think I've seen him in several other projects perform significantly better, and I just feel like I wanted more, and that may be that I wanted more from his character throughout the film, but I did feel like he was the person who didn't give like the just I felt like there was still room for improvement. You said Joseph Quinn. I think he did a almost perfect Johnny Storm, and once again, like that this may be writing. This may be writing the character because I think this is the best Johnny Storm, representation we've seen in live action by far. I think they really nailed the character. And Evan Moss, he doesn't get to act too much other than voice, but he kills it. Vanessa
Mhm.
Kirby was spectacular, but specifically Pedro, I think there was just a little bit of room for improvement. I'm not saying he did a bad job. I just think he could have done better, or maybe it was the writing. Something in there. I could have got a little bit more from him. What about you?
Yeah, so that's one of the things I think when we get into the spoiler aspect of this, we'll be able to talk about a little bit more, expounding on why we feel that way. Because I feel the same way about Pedro Pascal as well, but I really don't think it was necessarily him. Because there are a few scenes in the movie when we get to see him really just be on full display acting and really pushing to his limits. It was just as if like we've seen him in every other project. And I was really happy with those moments in time. But I really ultimately think it comes down to more the writing aspect, which again, we'll get into that he let me down a little bit. And again, I really don't think it's him. And I think it's something we're going to come around to end up really loving him in these future Marvel projects. I know there's been rumors that he's going to be the lead of these Avengers movies. He's not going to be the lead, regardless of whether he is or not. I think we're going to really enjoy his character moving forward a little bit more because I hopefully the writing gets a little bit stronger for him in particular. I think Vanessa Kirby was absolutely the star of the show, but I also do think that is part of the writing. It felt like she was really at the forefront of the Fantastic Four. They were really wanting to push a lot of her, I don't want to say too much about the spoiler parts for those people who haven't seen it yet, but they really wanted her to be at the forefront, it felt like. You touched on Joseph Quinn as Human Torch. I thought he was fantastic. One of my favorite aspects of the movie. And then obviously Evan Moss, like you said, didn't really get to see a whole lot of him, but I feel like the voice acting was really good. It's what I wanted from a character like the Thing, and it's something I hope we do get more of in the future. So overall, the acting was really good for me, and I think ultimately it just comes down to the writing a little bit is where I have some issues. Next thing I want to talk about with, Fantastic Four, there's a lot of visual stuff that has to be done with this movie. We have someone that's literally a rock in every single scene. That's a big aspect of the movie that can be a huge eyesore. When you have someone like Mr. Fantastic that's stretchy, that can also be an eyesore because sometimes the CGI doesn't look good, and then ultimately Human Torch is literally on fire. And when you have a human inside of a flame, obviously it can be a little tricky sometimes. So Zane, how did you feel about the just CGI and visual effects overall of this movie?
I think they did a spectacular job on these VFX. I and like you said, there is a lot of them. I don't know that there's a scene in this movie without visual effects, and
Mm-hmm.
that's really challenging. To stay consistent, to stay up to par on every shot, every frame. And there were a few scenes where I was like, "Ooh, that didn't really look good," or like that's clearly like a bad green screen job here and there. But honestly, with how much they did and how good everything looked, I really don't have too many complaints with um, the VFX of it all. I know my wife had a big complaint with one of the scenes toward the end of the movie. She said it really took her out of it. I don't know if I just missed it, which is really odd for me, or if or what was going. I actually might have been looking at Peyton at this time. Um, like with my mouth dropped, like to see if he was seeing what I was seeing. Um, but yeah, no, I definitely think they did a great job with this VFX. I for visual effects, I would say this is a 9 out of 10. Especially what they're doing. The one complaint, other than those few frames that I have, so I guess my second complaint with the VFX is the stylistic filter that they put on throughout the film. I didn't like.
Mm-hmm.
I know we talked about that. I know it's a style choice. It's something they were going for to kind of make it feel olden day ish. And I don't love that. How did the rest of it sit with you?
Yeah, overall, I think it's really just what you just talked about. It really felt like they wanted this movie to feel like vintage. And I think they definitely accomplished that with, the filter or like the grainy aspect of the movie. And I don't necessarily hate it because I know that's what they're going for. This is just a personal preference, which I know you feel the same way. We just want our movies to look crisp and clear. And I get it. I know what they were wanting to do, and I think they definitely 100% executed on what they were trying to do. Because I didn't leave the movie ever feeling like I was taken out of a scene. Like you said, just about every single scene in the movie had visual effects in it. So I never felt taken out of a scene. I never had any really big eyesores. Even when we are seeing Mr. Fantastic do his stretch stuff and the Thing is on the screen a lot. The Human Torch I thought looked fantastic. And obviously Vanessa Kirby's character with her, invisibility powers. I never felt like those looked bad. I always thought they executed them well. So I'm right there with you. I don't really know how much better they could have done with the visual effects without having the budget just completely exploded even more. So I'm happy with that aspect of it, and especially in a movie that is as heavily based on it, I think they did really good. And I also think this is a great thing moving forward for the future. We know what they're capable of with the visual effects now. So I think we need to start holding Marvel, which I think we already hold them to a pretty high standard, but especially with movies like Avengers, Doomsday coming out, Secret Wars, I'm sure those are two movies that are going to be super visually effects, to the max. Like there's going to be tons of it in that. I think we should expect this level of quality for those moving forward.
Well, and we have two movies back to back that really looked fantastic. We
Yeah.
had Thunderbolts, which relied heavily on practical, and then we have the Fantastic Four, which definitely lent itself to less practical effects. And so, after coming from, Brave and the Bold, not Brave and the Bold, Brand New
Brave New
World,
World. Yeah.
yeah, with that looked horrible. There was more bad shots in Brave New World than there were good. So it is a really good fresh breath of air to kind of see these films actually step up their quality to like, hey, you're not just going to get everyone to the theater anymore because you have the name Marvel on it. And so I saw an article where they talked to the director of The Creator, which is a original sci-fi film, and they talked to him and they were like, "Hey, how did you get your visual effects to look so good for so cheap?" And he really walked them through the process. And Thunderbolts was one of the first movies since that talk that they were actually able to produce. And so I'm hoping from now on we're going to see these lower budgets with really high quality visual effects.
Yeah, which is all we want. We don't need these like crazy looking stuff. We just want it to look good. I hear a lot of people, and especially in like the video game industry, we used to get video games like a series of a game. You used to get like the next entry like every other year. Now it takes like 7, 8 years to get that next entry in a series, and it's gotten to the point where like we don't need video games to look any better, right? Like they've reached a pinnacle where like we just are happy with them. We would rather just get more of the stuff. And so I kind of feel like that's kind of how we've gotten in like our movie industry. Movies already can look absolutely incredible when they're done correctly. We don't need to keep trying these experiments and stuff like that sometimes. Sometimes we just want it to look as good as it's going to look and just be happy with that product. And so I think Fantastic Four did a really great job with that. Next thing I want to talk about, it's a superhero movie after all. How was the action for you?
So the action was very very good when it was good, and very mid when it was mid. And I'll expound upon that in spoilers some more. But I think some of that just lent itself with pacing with the story they were trying to tell. I think there was very good action. It just kind of left me wanting in a few areas where I didn't like. I wanted to see more of our characters. When you have a team movie, you kind of want to see the team work together as good as they possibly can, and we got like sneak peeks of that, but not really full display of that. And I really wanted some more of that. But I mean, it was an action movie. Like it wasn't like they were trying to tell a story. There was not a bunch of downtime for dramatic speeches. This was an action movie. It was on full display. It was not the best action we've seen from Marvel. Even I wouldn't say it's top 10 action for Marvel.
Yeah, I feel like there's some moments throughout the movie where I really liked the direction they were going with the action scenes, and I think they did strike a really good balance of giving us a good action movie, but still having moments throughout the movie where they did slow down, and we did have those talking scene moments where we still thought it was a good moment, a very powerful moment, and it didn't feel like it was too much. So I think they did a really good job of balancing the action. overall, I always have a good time with superheroes punching other people. And I think they had a really cool aspect of that. One thing you touched on was it is a team, right? This is the Fantastic Four. I did feel wanting a little bit more of seeing them use their abilities as a team. I don't really think that's a spoiler, but I feel like as Fantastic Four, we should have seen them, bouncing their abilities off of each other. Like Mr. Fantastic does this, which causes the Thing to do that, and we go back and forth, and then Human Torch does this because of this happened. I feel like those scenes were what was lacking. I think back to the Avengers movie, and really Age of Ultron in particular, when we see the Avengers holding down the key, right, that Ultron's trying to get his drones to touch. I felt like we were really missing a scene like that where everything is working out because they're letting each other play to their strengths. And so that's one thing I would like to see move forward with the Fantastic Four as far as their action scenes are concerned, is give us more actual Fantastic Four and not just Mr. Fantastic and the Thing and Human Torch and Invisible Woman, if that makes sense.
No, for sure. And I think we can touch on that a little bit more in spoilers for maybe why that wasn't the case. Age of Ultron really lent itself well to that with the battle, and I just don't know if the third act that we got really lends itself to showing massive power moments or like massive like teamwork, and so that's a little bit of writing, but still, yet when we're talking about the action, I do think it just didn't quite hit the upper echelon of Marvel. I would say it's probably in a B tier for action, where it's not bad, not even close, but it's not up there.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And then the last thing I want to touch on with our non-spoiler aspect of the movie is the story. This is a big movie for the direction of which Marvel is going. I've heard some people even say, while we aren't finished with this phase of Marvel, this almost felt like the start of a new phase. And does that to you make this feel like this story was intentional? Does it feel like it is must-watch Marvel? Or do you kind of feel like it is Brave New World-esque, where really it's kind of one you could have skipped and you could just hop into this next Avengers movie and not really feel like you missed out on much?
I think this was the start of Phase 6. I think this is the start of Phase 6 for Marvel, and it definitely felt like it. You don't have to watch, for those of you who are like, "Hey, how many movies do I need to watch to watch this one?" Not a single one. You don't have to watch a single movie. You don't have to watch a single TV show. We don't see a character in this show or in this movie that we have met before, which I think is kind of crazy that we didn't even see, someone else that we've like a little Easter egg or anything. So to me, it's a really good quality, because before the podcast, we were talking about, this compared to Superman and how some people are, really still saying that Superman's a better film. And you said the comment that, it's just Marvel fatigue. It's not superhero fatigue. And I think that's really true. People are tired of having to keep up. It feels like a really big task to watch everything. And so the fact that this is displayed with not having to watch anything, I think that's a really good quality. Are you happy that that's kind of how this movie went with its connection to the MCU?
Yeah, and I think that's something we always talk about in particular with every Marvel movie watch. Can you watch this movie and feel like you got a complete and full story by the end of it? And the answer for this one's absolutely yes. And I think that is important with even when you're building a world. I think you should be able to hop into, I'm not going to say every movie, because obviously sequels, it makes sense for you to have watched the previous one. But especially new entries into a series, like this is the first Fantastic Four movie we've gotten in the MCU. This better have been a movie that you didn't have to watch anything else for. I kind of feel the same way about Thunderbolts, right? Obviously, those characters have been in other stuff. Obviously, if you had watched those other things, you might feel a better connection to them. But overall, you did not have to watch other movies, in my opinion, to enjoy Thunderbolts. And I think that's just a super important aspect moving forward with the MCU is, if it's a sequel, it makes sense, obviously, to have needed to watch what was before. But for new entries, I feel like you need to just be able to get in there, watch it, and enjoy it, and then go from there. So as far as I'm concerned with that, I was very happy with that. I thought the story overall was pretty fun. I definitely am excited for the future of where this is heading to us, and we'll get into that more in the spoiler aspect of it. But I really couldn't ask for much more from a new entry in an MCU movie, especially for a team as big and as important as the Fantastic Four. I feel like they executed it pretty well.
Yeah, and I really didn't touch much on the story. there as opposed to like the comparisons with the MCU. I think the story was good and I liked what was being told. It was still just very big for our quick runtime. Now I know it's a 2 hour long movie, and we always talk about telling with pace, but they told so much. The pace really is very, very fast, very quick, and we don't really get to see our characters outside of the imminent danger that is at hand. And I think we really needed some time to sit down with our characters to see their connections outside of tragedy, outside of panic, to really kind of grow that connection. They start with a montage, and I really love the montage of the story that they do and what they kind of do to catch us up to speed. But I wish they would have just sat and like waited for a little bit to let us sit with these characters. There's a time where they're going to sit down at dinner, but then we don't get to see them eat at the dinner. Like it's very rushed, very quick. So I feel like the pacing of the story may have been just a tiny bit too fast. I like it to flow, I like it to move, but I think we could have done a little bit better of character relations and character building completely to allow us to develop uh a more deep connection to these characters as they're going on this journey, as opposed to kind of just like by the end getting it. So, but I mean that again, it's a big ordeal to start someone in the middle of their story and then expect like all the connections. And I think this doesn't struggle as much for comic fans as it does for those who haven't, like, don't know who these characters are. I know my wife really had a hard time with that because she didn't know anyone. And so she felt like several times she was like, okay, like I don't know why this is happening or why this is a big deal. And I personally didn't have that complaint. So I think that it is important to mention though for those who don't read the comics and don't know them.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think this movie would have benefited from an extra 15 to 20 minutes. And I felt that around, the community, a lot of people have said that. And you mentioned this is a 2 hour and I think it's a couple minutes long movie or something like that. I really do think an extra 15 or 20 minutes could have done a lot for it. And this is coming from someone that is going to rate this movie very highly here in a second when we get to that point. But I feel like those are just the moments that really could have elevated this movie to making it what we would maybe consider like a perfect Marvel movie. And obviously, we're going to still have our complaints and stuff like that. But I feel like an extra 15 or 20 minutes could have really polished out a lot of the issues that we did have.
Yeah, there was definitely room for this movie to have more script, with a little bit more connections. It's actually only an hour and 55. So
Okay, so yeah,
was the actual runtime. So, but
yeah.
still solid. A solid story, and I like what you said, start to finish. Did you get a complete full story? And the answer is yes. The answer is yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get into our spoiler review, we like to go ahead and give our ratings for those of you that might still be on the fence by this point of the podcast. So Zane, why don't you start us off? Where do you rate this one? What's your rating for it?
My rating comes in at a solid 8. Now, I have this one significantly above Superman, and I know that's funny because I gave Superman an 8. However, I felt like Superman was a high 7. The story of this one is more solid. The action of Superman is better, in my opinion. Uh, when it's good, the action is better. When it's bad, the action is worse in Superman. So I think that Superman had higher points and lower points in Fantastic Four, and Fantastic Four was just more solid throughout the entirety of it. So I'm giving it a solid 8. And I think that's completely reasonable for this film. I wanted to rate it higher. I just don't think it did it for me, and which we'll get to in spoilers.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to give this movie a 9. I really liked it. I liked a lot of the aspect of it. I've been getting more into the Fantastic Four comics as we've gotten up and closer to the movie, and I've really just kind of fallen in love with these characters. I love this team. Dare I say it might be my favorite team in the Marvel universe. I'm really becoming a big fan of the Fantastic Four, and so I think a lot of those things definitely played into it for me. And overall, it's a 9. Now, I've gone back and forth so many times with, is this movie better than Superman? And because that's the question, that's the talk of the town. Everybody wants to know when you have these two big summer blockbusters with the two competing comic book industry juggernauts, which movie is better? And I don't honestly don't want to say Fantastic Four is better because I had so much fun with Superman, but I think like you just touched on, I think it just is a better movie. I think throughout the time, I just had not as many times where I was like, I'm not liking this aspect of the story. And that's by no means saying that this is a perfect story. There's a lot of things that could have been better. But I just feel like overall, I never had a moment like I did with Superman where I didn't really like the whole news being such a powerful tool, which I know it is in the world we even live in today. But I just feel like they pushed that aspect a little too much in that story. I never had a moment like that with the Fantastic Four where I was like, oh, I feel like they're pushing this part of the story a little bit too hard. And so just some small things like that are just what makes this movie, I think, just barely edge out Superman. I do still think I had more fun with Superman, if that makes sense. I think it just, the action aspect of Superman was more fun. I think the DC universe kind of lends itself to that a little bit sometimes because it can just be so just out there and just so crazy. And I'm not saying Marvel can't, but it sometimes feel like Marvel is a little bit more grounded than something like the DC can be. So I think some of those aspects are kind of what gets me, just liking this movie a little bit better though. I just feel like I might have had a little bit more fun with Superman. And it kind of goes back to, we did a review on the past on The Last of Us Season 1 and Fallout Season 1. And I think I said I gave them both 10s, but I think The Last of Us Season 1 was better than Fallout Season 1. And I think I had more fun with Fallout. And sometimes it just lends itself to those natures with the story that's being told. Sometimes it's just a better through and through story. Obviously, Last of Us Season 2 kind of ruins that for us. But overall, I kind of feel the same way about these two movies. I might rank them the same. One just is a little bit better for those reasons that I just said.
Which I completely understand. And especially with how you kind of like to rewatch movies, I kind of put Superman in the same vein as like Revenge of the Sith,
Yeah.
where it's like, okay, I'm gonna rewatch this section. I'm not gonna rewatch the entire movie, but I'm definitely gonna watch Duel of the Fates. Like that's kind of how I felt with Superman. Like there's moments in Superman that I'm like, I really want to rewatch that series. Like I want to watch that series. And whereas if with Fantastic Four, I feel like I would want to watch the whole movie if I sat down and rewatched it. That's kind of how I kind of put that in description for rating these two.
And especially, I think with these two movies, I think we've both only seen them both once. So I think it
Right.
may be after if we've seen them 2 or 3 times, I think we would get a better of understanding of which way we might lean more. I might eventually lean more towards Superman. I think you're probably still going to lean more towards the MCU and the Fantastic Four, but I do still think it's a possibility that you could start to feel a little bit better about one or the other after we've seen them a few times. So you also do need to think about that when we're comparing them, because most of the time when we're building our rankings and we're putting movies ahead of another, we've usually seen them a few times. So that does definitely make a big difference as opposed to just seeing both once. And we do have a little bit of recency bias with Fantastic Four because we just saw it. We do remember the highs and the lows a little bit better. So I think those are some things that you definitely have to take into consideration with these rankings.
And I'm a big values guy, so I really love like the values put forth. And even though Superman is super holistic and like is a good person, he wants to do right. There is like those qualities of life in it. But man, the family values and the family dynamic that is put forth within First Steps, I really love. Like I just really like the entire core family values that are put forth in this, which we really haven't seen from Marvel in a really long time. So it was nice to see Marvel kind of get back to some good solid values in their films. And I think the value of family and love and togetherness was better than just do good because I'm Superman kind of value. But
You can fix that. Willie started barking, so I was waiting for him to stop barking before I started talking again.
gotcha.
So, all right, let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready.
The one thing I will say about the values, Fantastic Four did not save a squirrel, and that means a whole lot to me in the long run. But overall, let's get into these spoiler review a little bit. So this is your guys' warning. If you guys don't want to hear anything about the Fantastic Four movie, definitely click off at this time and then come back after you've seen the movie, and that you finally have some thoughts of your own, and that you don't base your entire thought process off of the things that we say here on the podcast. But Zane, let's get into this spoiler review aspect a little bit here. And the first thing I wanted to touch on is something that you touched on a little bit in the non-spoiler aspect of it, was the opening of the movie. I thought the opening was really, really strong. I love the aspect that we got thrown right into this universe. We didn't get really a whole, we didn't get a whole scene of them getting their powers. We didn't get spoon fed all that stuff. They gave us a few clips, told us what happened, and then we're right into seeing them in action. We get to see the Human Torch saving trains by melting the train tracks together. We get to see the Thing pulling a boat out of the water that had previously broken down. So many cool aspects throughout that ultimate, the start of this movie that I think really kind of propel us forward, which is something I think we've seen with Superman, right? I feel like a lot of these movies had a lot of similar aspects to them. With Superman, we get thrown right into the world. We're not being shown Krypton. We're not being shown what Superman is, what he does, all that stuff. We're just getting told it, and then we go on and get into the meat of the story. What did you think about that aspect moving forward with these superhero movies in general? Do you like that we're kind of just getting thrown into them and just getting a couple minutes of backstory just so we know exactly who this person is and then we get into it? Or do you want to see a little bit more backstory? Do you wish we had scenes of them up in space and really going through the turmoil of having, the molecular biology of their bodies changed?
So I don't really think we need to have that done again. We're getting to the point where these are told stories. We're retelling the same story, so you don't have to tell everything. I love what Superman did. And I really would have liked to seen one of my complaints with Superman was I didn't think he really won any fights with ease. So it would have been cool to kind of see a flashback at some point of him like just beating the mess out of some people, winning fights super easily. However, with Fantastic Four, I really do think that um the the series at the start of it, where they're just throwing scene after scene, really played to the retro vibe that we got. It was almost as if like the storytelling in and of itself and how they were laying out that these heroes have done things in the past was really matching the vibe and the scene that they were setting. So I really love that aspect of it. I could have done with more action in it. If you're going to show these scenes, you could have shown like how did they defeat Mole Man, or like just a little bit more from these flashbacks. If you're going to show them, like let's go ahead and make them worth it. I thought they were good, but I was left wanting more of them in that moment because I was enjoying them.
Yeah, I'll 100% agree with that. But one thing I will give this credit to, which we gave a ton of credit to Superman, and not to keep bringing up Superman, but I think it is prevalent to bring up that movie because it really is what this movie is going up against this year. It's the DC Universe kicking itself off, and this is what Marvel's competition is going to be. What I have to give credit to Fantastic Four, which again, something Superman did, it did feel like a comic book movie, which I absolutely love. It felt like, when a new arc in a comic book starts, usually when you flip that first page of that new arc, they do catch you up a little bit to let you know what you might have missed out on if you hadn't read it, to give you that opportunity if it interests you to go back and get it. That's totally what this felt like, right? So we have like the Fantastic Four taking on Red Ghost and his super apes, which we see Mr. Fantastic kick one through like a cell tower or something like that. Really cool aspect of it. So I really like that we got that. We got 100% a comic book throwback with them taking on Giganto, which was literally like the cover of the first Fantastic Four issue, which I love throwbacks and stuff like that. So those aspects are the things I really liked, but I kind of get what you're saying. It was so fun and so good at the beginning. You almost wanted to see them like really do one of these scenes. Like, let's see him fight the superpower ape. Like, let's see that whole fight. Again, this is where maybe that extra 15, 20 minutes, maybe we get a 5-minute fight scene like that, could have really made a huge difference in how we felt moving forward with the Fantastic Four and their powers.
Yeah, but again, like, I think they did a good job with it. Like, and the callbacks that you just said, I do love that they were staying true to their superhero roots. They did put those in there. Like, it wasn't like they were shying away from what it was. And even though it was a more serious tone throughout the movie, they really did play to the superhero roots well.
100%. And I think that's obviously really important in a superhero movie. You don't want it not to feel like a superhero movie, and I think through and through this one did feel like one. The next thing I wanted to ask you about, which I want to get back to this early on in the spoiler review aspect, because it is something I think we both had a bigger problem with, and it's something that we both talked about in the non-spoiler aspect. And let's talk about Mr. Fantastic, because we both had a little bit of issues with Pedro Pascal, and we don't necessarily really feel like it was really him. We almost felt like it was the story that was being told and the way he was being told to act. And as far as I'm concerned, Zane, who would you say is the leader of the Fantastic Four?
Oh, it's Vanessa Kirby. Sue Storm was.
That's exactly how this movie makes you feel. And I just don't like that aspect of it. And I'm not against it. I kind of get the story they were trying to tell, but it really did feel like Mr. Fantastic was not the leader. He wasn't being the one in charge. He wasn't the one answering the important questions. And I'm not upset about it. I just feel like for a character like him, with the Fantastic Four as popular as they are, one of the most popular Marvel teams there is, I feel like you do need to stay true to those type of things. The one scene in particular that really, really bothered me for whatever reason is when we get our first look at Silver Surfer. She comes down and she asks if the Fantastic Four, who are all standing in front of her, are the protectors of this earth, and he doesn't answer. It's Sue Storm that answers, and for whatever reason, that just really bothers me, because I feel like in any other iteration of the Fantastic Four that we've ever gotten, Mr. Fantastic would have been the first to speak up, and he might have said something that was too smart for me to even realize what he said, but at least he was the one answering the question. And that's part of the part that I have the hardest problem with Pedro Pascal's Mr. Fantastic, is it just felt like he was taking too much of a backseat throughout this movie.
And I think what they were trying to show with that was like the tortured genius, like he's analyzing
Mm-hmm.
every situation. And I get the thought behind some of that. However, I do really wish that they would have shown, like, it was a weird balance between anxiety and incredible arrogance in his own intellect. Like, and he was battling with that internally, and it was really shown. I just would have loved to have not seen so much anxiety slash worry throughout him, almost crippling to not movement because he's thinking. I would have liked to seen him quicker on his feet with those
Mm-hmm.
thoughts. I would have liked to seen him really be able to think through something and react immediately because he is the most intelligent person in the world. Um, so that is a little bit of it, and I agree. I think it is just a little bit too much anxiety. And we talked about Marvel fatigue. It also might be a little bit Pedro Pascal fatigue because he is currently in 3 movies that are playing in the theater right
Yeah.
now.
He's hitting it big time, man. I'm telling you, that paycheck is showing up for him right now. But I agree with all those things. It just feels like I don't know. Touched on the things that I didn't like about it, and I feel like in these type of movies, there is a time to think, but there's also a time to act. And I feel like they just need to find that balance a little bit better with Mister Fantastic, because every other time you see Mister Fantastic, he is the first person to analyze the situation and to get on the problem. And it just felt like he was a little bit delayed throughout this movie, and that's something that just bothered me personally. And it wasn't ever something that was really just a scene. It feels like that throughout the whole movie, and that really is frustrating for someone that I'm a big fan of Mr. Fantastic. I think he's awesome. I think there's something really cool about characters that are super smart and can outthink, brute strength sometimes. And I just wanted to see more of that. And we do get some of those moments where his smarts are on display. I just feel like they were a little bit few and far between for the type of character he is.
Yeah, no, I agree, and he was good. Like, and I know that's a lot of criticism, and then to say like, "Hey, he was good," like he was good. It just was not my favorite rendition, and I think he still did a better job than most of the other renditions that we've seen of the character. I just, I think and honestly, it may have just been the worry. It may have been how much worry and anxiety was in it. I just didn't love that. I like them to be a little bit more confident and sure of themselves, trusting, you know, and the optimistic look as opposed to the pessimistic look. Um, I kind of felt like Sue Storm. There's a point in there where he's like, I think these thoughts so that no one else does, or like it doesn't have to come to, so that no one gets hurt. And she responds with saying, "Well, you being who you are hurts me." And I was like, "Okay, like that's how I feel. Like stop with the stressing. Like I want to like you're Mr. Fantastic. Like be fantastical and solve the problem. Stop worrying about it." Like so um I think that may have been a little bit of it for me.
100%. And I think that's a good scene to bring up because it that hits it right on the head. Like, it is frustrating and it is hurting us as viewers to see you like this because we just want to see you be awesome. Another question I want to bring up for you is another person that we heard a lot of people complaining about throughout the process of this, casting, and the fact that it was going to be a female Silver Surfer really bothered a lot of people. How did you feel about Silver Surfer as a character throughout this movie?
Fantastic. Best decision they could have made. I love the dynamic that they put in. and we didn't talk about her in
Yeah,
the
I just thought about that
in the
too. The
casting. I thought about
non-spoiler.
it. I wanted to bring it up, but I also thought that it might be a little bit of a spoiler talking about Shalabah. And every like, it's hard to talk about her without spoiling because we know how much we get of her.
Mhm.
And Julia Garner literally just nails the part. I love the female Silver Surfer, and the best part is because the dynamic she gets to have with Johnny. I think that gives some good comedy that isn't forced. It gives a great dynamic, and it gives Johnny a time to shine, and it really allows him to have his own story arc throughout this, as we also get to see the female Silver Surfer doing what she does best. I think the best scenes in this movie have the Silver Surfer in it. And it's very good. The sad part was that she kind of disappears in the third act. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of her in that final battle. But yeah, anyone who still complains about a female Silver Surfer, I just don't know. I don't know what could be causing you to do that, except for like you just don't like women. Like honestly, I
Yeah.
really don't know.
I feel like a lot of that is probably honestly true, and I feel the same way about Silver Surfer. It was such a cool aspect of the movie, and she does disappear in that third act a little bit, like you touched on. But man, that re-entrance when she jumps in to stop Johnny from sacrificing himself, it really just felt like the story came full circle at that point. Because she was the one that put them in that situation, but ultimately she's going to be the one that kind of saves them. And I thought that was just such a powerful moment, especially between two characters that had a very strong connection. One thing that I think a lot of people haven't discussed enough with this version of Johnny Storm is he wasn't just like a cool jerk. He was a smart, cool guy. He was no jerk aspect about him. He was just a cool Johnny Storm. And we get to see him really with his smarts on display by deciphering her language from the planet she's from. They get to have those moments. He really is the ultimate reason why she kind of comes to realize what she's doing is not okay and that she can actually be of good help to people in the universe. And I just thought that was one of the best, strongest parts of the story and the movie overall. And one thing I wanted to touch on, I think she looked fantastic throughout the movie. I think they did a really good job of showcasing the CGI and stuff on her. And just, I mean, the Silver Surfer is a cool character. It's one of my favorite characters in Marvel. And it's important to note that the surfboard is not part of the body. So I think that's also a very important aspect of this movie.
Yeah, no, it did look very good. And her scenes, I don't think I ever had a scene where I was like, okay, that doesn't look good. I think specifically like one of the most CGI heavy points in the movie where they're surfing around the black hole, like her surfing through the debris of the black
Yeah.
hole was very visually pleasing. It was super cool and executed well. I really struggle with a little bit of the physics of that because of how the gravity would have been too strong for like, and I know this is stupid and nitpicky, but like, I have trouble with the Superman aspect of we got two superhero movies 2 weeks
So we
apart.
can fly out of
They
black
both
holes.
have black holes in them, and they both kind of do stupid things to do it. Superman's was visually like they wanted a cool scene and it looked cool, but it's really stupid that his breath is stronger than him being able to fly. And then here we are. We have the gravity that apparently from a black hole only is like functional when you get really, really close. Like, they
What
were close.
at least they were like, it's gonna take her a month to get out of here.
The
Superman
time,
just kind of gets out of there.
yeah, the
So
time dilation. I do love that they thought through that, and they thought like there was cool parts of the black hole. Like, don't get me wrong. It would have just been cool to see like the time dilation already be in effect throughout most of that. It would have been really cool for them to get back to Earth and them have said it was longer than what they said, because they said it was been a few months, and it would have been really cool if they were like, it's been a year.
yeah, for sure. And that's I just think an important aspect to talk about because I think it was just one of the strongest parts of the movie. And I do wish now that we would have brought it up in the non-spoiler part, but it is kind of like you have to talk about those spoiler moments for this, like to get that point across. for how
Yeah.
strong of a character she was. So I thought that was really cool. One thing I want to talk about, and we're jumping around a little bit here. How did you feel about Galactus being the villain? Because I personally left the movie feeling a little underwhelmed with what we did get as Galactus, and this will lead into one of the aspects that I talked about in the non-spoiler part. That was one of my biggest problems with the movie. But before we get into that, how did you feel about Galactus as a villain?
And this is one. I think this is why it's an 8. Like I don't think we need to see the biggest baddest villain for the Fantastic Four as the first villain. Like like them going up against him, like he should have ripped Reed Richards in half
In half.
immediately. Right?
Yeah.
Like he pulled on him for 30 seconds. Like
And
he
not to
could have.
interrupt you though, but another part of my problem with that scene is like they almost made Reed's superpower a weakness, which that in and of itself kind of doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's just kind of weird. Like, no, I agree with you. And one of my coworkers, Alejandro, he was like, I feel like he should stretch more. And I was like, I kind of feel the same way. I know
Mhm.
Galactus is a like, massive giant, but I definitely think Galactus is one of those things where it's like, okay, Reed should have like. I understand we had a plan, and I liked the plan, and everything was like it was going cool. Like I get it, like it's fun to watch, but at the same time, it's like, why did Galactus get smaller? Like why did he jump down here and like walk among this planet? Like you know, it almost seems like we're dialing down the character so that he can have this moment, and I get that, but I also like it's just not. It's hard. It's hard for me. It's a hard character to throw into live action. It's a hard character to defeat. I really enjoyed the stuff with Silver Surfer more because I just feel like that's a better dynamic for the group to face. It seems like it's more reasonable what is going on. And Galactus is so strong, like nothing they're doing is affecting him, but yet he's not doing anything to affect them. Like he
Yeah.
should have really been able to kill someone like super easy. Like, and I think it's that Reed Richards moment where he grabs him and he really should have just ripped him right in half. Like that really should have been able to happen.
Mhm. Yeah, and this also goes back to one of my biggest complaints with the movie is, we have this big lead up to Galactus showing up on Earth, and we keep getting reminded like, oh, he's passing Jupiter, oh, he's coming around Mars now, which I felt like that was a little bit like I feel like he should have been able to get there faster if he wanted to. It's almost like he was giving them time to prepare, and it almost felt like they were doing that for the sake of the plot, which I didn't necessarily like that a lot. But it did add like that anticipation of, oh, he's getting closer, he's getting closer. But my biggest problem with the Galactus fight is just, it goes back to what I said in the non-spoiler review. We just don't get a moment where it felt like the Fantastic Four were the Fantastic Four. It felt like so much throughout that fight. It was, all right, this is Mr. Fantastic's best shot at him. All right, he didn't do good. All right, let's throw the Thing at him. All right, Thing wasn't able to do it. Johnny, it's your turn. And then ultimately we get to a point where it feels like Invisible Woman kind of takes him on by herself. And I know some people have said, oh, we have the moment where the Thing knocks down the building, which is what Galactus was holding on to. Are you kidding me? Like, it should have been more than just he's knocking down a building. And then we have the Human Torch. Guess what he got to do? He got to fly over to a lever and stand there and wait. And then Mr. Fantastic, all you got to do is just jump up and grab the baby and then land back on the ground. I just feel like we should have had a moment where you're like, oh, Invisible Woman grabbed, like, froze his hand in place, and Mr. Fantastic was able to stretch around it, and, Johnny lights him on fire, and then the Thing delivers this huge punch to him. Like, I just feel like that aspect was missing from this part of Galactus being the villain, which would have made me feel better about them introducing such a big bad villain, is if we actually got to see a team face him, like take him out, which is I feel like the only way you can take out a big villain like that is when you work as a team, and it just felt like they were missing that for me.
Yeah, and like you said, like even if like Mr. Fantastic stretched across the street as a rope and tripped him or something, like there's a few things we can do while
Yep.
she's pushing that's a little better than that. We get to see Johnny go save the Thing and then throw him at him and like those things that you touched on. I completely agree. Like there just needed to be more teamwork and unity, especially for it's not a brand new team. And I think this is where it struggles when we jump into a mid-career superhero team that's been doing it for a long time. the writers haven't got used to writing them, but
Yeah.
yet they're supposed to be mature and developed. And so they don't really know what works on screen. They don't really know how it's going to play. I think in the next time we see the Fantastic Four, we're going to get that dynamic. I think even with Avengers, you touched on Age of Ultron. After seeing all the Avengers on screen, it's really cool the second time around to really think about, like, okay, how do they work together? And I think they were just so focused on, okay, how do they work, that they forgot about how do they work together, except for those
Mhm.
shoehorn moments when they did.
And I feel like that brings us back, talking about even the first Avengers movie. They do have moments throughout the whole movie where they don't know how to work with each other. They're all trying to do their own thing. But at least by the end of the movie, they've kind of figured it out, right? Like they are familiar with each other enough. Like we see Iron Man fly Hawkeye up onto the top of he calls him Legolas and takes him up there to like a point of view where he can, kind of dictate the fight from up there. We see Captain America, taking the lower ground levels, escorting people out, doing the more hand-to-hand combat. Tony's doing the outside stuff, not letting things escape the city. That's what I was wanting from this. Like, I wanted just to see them all using each other's strengths. And it just felt like that didn't happen. And I think you made a really good point. Maybe the writers just weren't quite prepared to know exactly how they wanted to make them all work together, which makes sense. You've never written them before. But if you, again, goes back to what you said, if you are going to put them in the middle of their careers, they should be able to work together already. So I think those are things that are gonna eventually work themselves out, but we're just kind of getting through those growing pains right now.
Yeah. And all of those things in the movies that we're talking about, they had cannon fodder. There was
Yeah.
no cannon fodder enemies in this. There was no big CGI army that the Fantastic Four could go against. And I think I kind of hinted at that in the non-spoilers, but that's really when a lot of our superheroes get to see their big strengths, is when there is disposable minions or whatever, to
Yeah,
kind of
enemies.
really get to show their power, to show their display of, like, okay, like they're taking out these normies like super easily. And we just didn't really get to see that. And so I think it's funny because a big CGI army is like the staple of kind of like superhero
Yeah.
movies at this point. And we even get to kind of see it in Superman. He gets to
Yeah.
take out those big flying guys at one point or whatever, come in, and like Mr. Terrific gets to beat up like 75 just normies who are sitting at the camp. And so, but we never got any of that in Fantastic Four. And so I think it may have struggled a little bit from not getting to show their powers, but I really like that they did something different. And so it's good. It's good to switch it up. It's good that we have this. And something we haven't talked about with the story, the plot to move the earth and the sun, or like I thought that was phenomenal. I thought that was
Yeah.
really cool, and something that you touched on. In order to make sense for why you could just move it, this universe has not developed wormhole travel. They've developed faster than light travel, which Galactus's ship doesn't have. And so I really like that a lot of that played into the fact that, they don't have jump points like the Guardians do. There is no Guardians in this universe. So the space travel is different. And I thought that was a really cool aspect, that they put a lot of effort and thought into, okay, what are we doing? How are we doing this here? And so it was pretty cool to get them to try to move the earth. And I was like, well, what's going to happen? And I actually thought it was going to be successful. And then when Silver Surfer just starts breaking them, I think my heart sank. I was like, oh no, not like, okay, what are we going to do? So I thought that was really good. I enjoyed those moments. I thought that was like, that was so fun. And so it was a different way to solve a problem. And we get to see the intelligence of Reed Richards on display. And so that, I thought that was really good.
Yeah, I love that. That's when the movie, I feel like, is at its strongest. Is kind of in that middle to like getting into the third act of the movie. I love like the whole Archimedes lever thing, and he's like, "Find me a lever." And I love that like he is trying to figure it out and he's working through it. I also thought a very strong point of the movie, which we haven't touched on, Franklin any, which is a huge aspect of this movie, almost like the driving force for the movie, is I love that even Mr. Fantastic tossed the idea around of giving up his son to save the rest of the world. And they do play it off a little bit like, oh, I would never do that. But even just being the mad scientist that he is going to think about every possible scenario and weigh out the cons and, the pros of it. I thought that was a really powerful moment between him and Invisible Woman, Sue Storm, is kind of the fact that he even thought about it. And that's kind of when you get that scene brought up where it's like, you being the way you are hurts me. That was one of those moments that was literally on full display where him being the way he has hurt her. And I thought that was a really powerful scene, which I feel like this movie has a few of those moments where you're like, okay, that scene really did hit.
Yeah, and it's that sacrifice where it's like, hey, if we don't make the sacrifice, he's gonna die anyway. So we kind of have to think about, like, it does have to be a process, a thought of like, hey, what do we do? It's an unbearable sacrifice. It's
Mm,
unimaginable. But yet at the same time, like, it does have to be on the table because at the end of the day, if you don't sacrifice him, he sacrifices anyway. So
yep.
and I mean, you couldn't live with yourself a lot of the time, but um, it was really like I did love the Franklin points and uh, the end of the movie, right, where Sue is so exhausted that she gives up her life to defeat Galactus. I thought was a very strong point. I
Yep.
um. I was not really emotional in that moment, and I was like, "Daggone, they really killed her." And then the music from Tony Stark's funeral starts playing. I was like, now wait a second, like, is this actually like final? Which I thought they did a really good job with the score in that moment, and throughout the entire film, I thought the score was pretty solid. But like to pull back that music, I thought that was pretty nostalgic and pretty awesome. And then the baby starts crying and going towards her, and I was like, dude, are they putting this baby on his dead mother? I was like,
Yeah,
what
dude.
in the world, dude? Honestly, like I just thought about like I and me being the super softy, um, thinking about putting myself in every step. I was just thinking of Chelsea just gave her life, and then Ezra wanting his mom, and dude, I just couldn't. Like, I just put like, oh my goodness, I was like, Chelsea is laughing at the CGI in that moment, and I'm just like, are
About to
you really?
cry.
Yeah, no, I was. I did. Like I was like, are you putting this baby on his dead mom? Like what in the world is going on? Like it was insane. And it was very emotional. I thought it was a great moment. It's wild and it's cool to get to see Franklin's powers to heal his mom, to bring her back to life. That's not the final, but that was very very well done. I bravo to that, honestly.
Well, and that's one of the moments where I feel like Pedro Pascal really got to shine. That scene where she's dying and he's trying to bring her back to life. He's giving her CPR. He's crying. Like that's where it felt like he was finally given freedom. Hey, Pedro, just go do your job here. Just go act. And I feel like we needed more of those scenes from him. And I think that was a great moment. I do want to touch on we touched on a little bit. Did you like how big of a story point Franklin was? The fact that that's what Galactus wanted. If Galactus got the baby, he would spare Earth. Did you like his involvement, or do you feel like they kind of pushed it a little bit too much and wish it would have been more centered around the Fantastic Four?
Um, no, I love it. I think it really puts puts everything in perspective. Um, the sacrifice choice that has to be made gives significant more stakes. And as a father, it really resonates with me significantly more than anything else does, right? The fact that your son's life is on the line in multiple ways. So for me, it really resonates, and I love what's done. Um, it's just and then moving forward, something we haven't talked about. But before the movie, Peyton, I asked Peyton, I was like, "You think Doom shows up? You're wearing a Doom shirt," and he goes, "Oh, Doom's definitely gonna be in this." And I was like, "Honestly, dude, I don't think he's gonna be in there." I said, "I don't even know if they'll reference him." And then they showed the Latvia seat with that was empty, and Jackie looked at me and said, "Well, you were dead wrong." And I was like. I was like, yeah, yep, deserve that one. That was
Well,
good.
we're winding down here a little bit on the spoiler, review aspect here. Let's talk about Doctor Doom a little bit. We do get that Latvia scene a little bit, but that's really the only reference throughout the movie that we get to Doctor Doom. And correct me if I'm wrong, is this the first time we've had a Marvel movie have an end credit scene that they didn't turn the lights on in the movie theater and made everyone stay seated to watch?
Uh,
Because that's the first thing I noticed when the credits started rolling. Usually they turn the lights on a little bit, people get up and start leaving. This is the first time I can remember a Marvel movie, maybe ever, not doing that. It's almost felt like they were like told, like, hey, don't turn the lights off until we get to this big scene here at the end.
I feel like the lights always come on after the mid-credit scene.
Okay, maybe I'm just because I always feel like it's right before the mid-credit scene they turn them on, and then we get that scene, and then we get the ultimate end credit scene at the very end.
Yeah, I feel like the mid-credit scene generally gets to shown beforehand because I'm thinking even of Endgame when all of the names are getting shown. That's definitely something that I think is like the lights are out for that. So I think that's normal, but I could be mistaken.
Well, either way though, we head into this mid-credit scene. You can tell the anticipation is still high. Just with the way the movie ended, it still felt like there was one big punch they had left to throw. And we're sitting there. We've seen, is it 4 years later? We get to see Franklin's.
Yes, 4 years old.
4 years later, we get to see Franklin sitting on the couch with his mom, Sue, and they're reading a book. We get a little funny moment where she's trying to figure out what book to read, and Herbie's like showing all these super advanced books that he's already reading at 4 years old. And she's like, no, let's find his favorite book. And she gets some little kid book. And then we hear like a portal of some sort in the other room. We get to see Sue, get her hand ready. She's got her invisibility orb or whatever you want to call it ready to launch at whoever's in this room. And we see her walk around the corner, and there he is. The moment we've really all been waiting for throughout this entire movie. Dr. Doom is standing right in front of Franklin with his mask off. Zane, how did you feel in that moment?
Well, I was stunned. Like I said, like I was not expecting Doctor Doom to show up in this. I was honestly, and I don't know why. I just wasn't. I didn't think they were ready for those punches, and clearly, like we didn't see his face, right? We just saw the mask off. It was visually super cool to see. But yeah, I was just stunned. Everyone in the theater started cheering. They were super happy to see Doom. And that's one of the reasons I love that this focused on Franklin so much. The fact that this is the spark that gets us to Secret Wars. And so it's really cool to kind of see that end credit scene. And I was like, all right, very cool. Excited to see what's coming next.
Yeah, I was so pumped in that moment. And it actually has been confirmed. That really was Robert Downey Jr. in that scene. It wasn't a stand-in or anything like that. He was there to film that end credit scene. And man, it was so cool. A few things I've seen people breaking down about the end credit scene. One thing a lot of people have been mentioning is, if you notice, he was holding his mask. So clearly this universe that they're in probably doesn't have access to nanotech, which I think is a very interesting story point moving forward on if there's a reason why he doesn't have it, if he prefers one or the other. And then ultimately, why did he have his mask off for Franklin? And there's so many fun theories floating around out there about stuff for that, but I think this was one of the most fun end credit scenes, and it feels like an end credit scene that was actually worth watching. A lot of the time we get them and they're like, well, obviously, like, we kind of know the direction they're going, but this one felt like it's actually going to be important moving forward, and almost feels like maybe exactly where the next Avengers movie will start.
Yeah, definitely play directly into it. Now, the final end credit scene was completely skippable and not very fun.
That one was not after what we had just got. That one was definitely a letdown.
Yeah, not worth it. But yeah, dude, Doctor Doom showing up. Peyton, you nailed it. You're psychic. You have all the wisdom. I'm an idiot. But no, it was so fun. I had such a good time watching this movie, and really did enjoy the movie. I do think it could have been better, but it definitely was still a very solid entry into the Marvel. And I really kind of want to see where you rank this in terms of like top Marvel. I think we really, before Secret Wars happened, I think we need to do a tier ranking of all the Marvel projects. We got 53 of them out and release. So that would be super interesting to kind of see where they fall for you, to get like a pulse on your Marvel rankings.
Well, let's go ahead and make that commitment now. We will do that the week before Secret Wars releases. That'll be our what would you call it? Our pre whatever episode
Yeah,
to Secret
pre-gaming.
Wars. Our pre-game episode to Secret Wars. We will rank every single Marvel project in order of which we think is best, and which one is worse. And maybe we can find like a program. I know there's a lot of programs out there that even if we both did our own list, it can take our list, put them together, and give us like a weekly fix. Ranking where it will take like our scores for each of them. That might be pretty fun to figure out. But man, it's getting to that point with Marvel where I think it's starting to kind of get its mojo back. We just had a fantastic movie with Thunderbolts. This movie I think was incredible for me. I really, really enjoyed it. And we got some big ones coming up. We have Secret Wars, we have Doomsday, and then the one that's starting to get a little bit more hype. I feel like we're probably going to get in the next few months closer to hearing more and more about it is Spider-Man Brand New Day, which supposedly will have no impact on Doomsday or Secret Wars, which I find really fascinating with how big of a character Spider-Man is. They're all saying this is going to be a very street level, individual film that you're not going to necessarily need to have watched for Doomsday or Secret Wars. But obviously this is all very early things, but what do you think? Do you think that's actually an accurate statement, or do you think there's no way they sideline Spider-Man for something like Secret Wars or Doomsday?
I think it'll have something. It may be small, but it definitely will have something to do with it. But I think it starts filming next week, is I think what they said.
Very close. So we'll be getting leaks, and we'll be talking about stuff that we hear on that here in the coming weeks, I'm sure, which will be a lot of fun, especially for me being Spider-Man being my favorite Marvel hero. I cannot wait to have him back on the big screen. It's going to be so much fun. But guys, I think that is going to do it for our Fantastic Four review. Zane, is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we hopped off here?
Nah, send us out, Jacob.
Yeah, so Fantastic Four review, I gave it a 9, Zane gave it an 8. I think that in and of itself lets you know if it's something that's worth going to watch. I think we do a really good job of letting people know if it's worth spending your money on. That's a question I didn't ask you, Zane. Would you recommend this movie?
Absolutely. I think this movie is a good watch, especially like the humor isn't forced, and when it is there, like I think it's a good time. It's a good solid start to finish movie, and as comic booky as it is, it doesn't play its hand only to comic book fans. So if you're kind of on the edge, you kind of like these movies, but you haven't really seen them in a while, or maybe you've been uninterested for a minute, I definitely would fully recommend going to watch this one. You'll really enjoy it.
Yep, I completely agree. I think there's too much good in this movie to be told not to go watch it if you've heard a negative review or anything like that. Definitely take it from us. I think this is a fun movie. I definitely think it's worth watching. It's a complete story, and it definitely pushes us forward in the Marvel Universe and gets us pretty excited for what's to come. But that is going to do it for our Fantastic Four review. If you guys did enjoy it, make sure to let us know in whatever platform you're on. If you're on YouTube, leave us a comment. You can actually, I think you can leave comments on Spotify now, correct, Zane?
That's right.
Yep, so leave us a comment if you're on Spotify, send us something on social media, you can get us on Instagram or X, anytime you guys want to reach out to us. We also have a Discord that's available to people that want to join if they want to give their input in there. But as always, we want to thank you all so much for listening to us ramble on, and we can't wait to catch you in the next episode of Weekly Fix.